Being out of work over 40 can feel like a crisis, but it doesn't have to be if you have a method to turn decades of knowledge into income that reflects your value. If you're starting a YouTube channel, learning how to use the platform is only part of the job. Being a creator is still work, and work needs structure. Without a clear process, you stay busy, but you're not productive. Today, I'd like to help you fix that. You have that voice in the back of your mind, and it just won't leave you alone. It asks questions. Where do you start so that you don't waste your time on the wrong things? In which order should the work happen in for you to actually manage it? And how do you keep track of your progress to see if your effort really moves your channel forward? These are real questions, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why these 3 problems are holding you back and how the work is meant to flow so you can track the progress of your channel. I'm Laurent. The platform has all the buttons and dashboards that you could possibly need. What it doesn't give you is a clear process to follow. It shows you where to upload and what buttons to click, but it doesn't explain how any of this fits together once you're actually doing the work, or how one step is supposed to lead to the next. You're putting in the work already. It simply needs the right sequence to turn it into something you can repeat. YouTube doesn't give you a job description, so you're constantly trying different things to see what works, because it's not always clear how to move forward. Once you see it in action, it's much easier to understand. In a normal job, you're told what to do, and you know where to begin when you walk in. YouTube don't give you that entry point. Even after all the research, it can still feel unclear. Some days you're watching other creators, trying to understand how they do it. Other days you develop ideas, thinking about what you really want to say. And you tell yourself you'll sort it out later. Sometimes you turn the camera on without a plan. In the moment, it feels like progress. But working hard only helps when you know what the first step is. And that means choosing where to begin. It's like going to the shop for one thing, coming home and realizing you forgot it. When that keeps happening, you start thinking maybe you're the problem. You're not the problem. You simply don't have a clear path, and when that's missing, it's hard to keep going. If you hesitate, you just don't start. It's hard to tell where one task finishes and the next one starts when there isn't a clear window and everything seems to blend together. In a regular job, there's usually a straightforward way to do things. You plan the work, you do the work, then you're done. Simple. With YouTube, that order usually falls apart. You have an idea, you write it down, then you tweak it. Or you start recording and you change what you're saying halfway through. When this happens, your work starts to spread out, and you find yourself bouncing between tasks instead of finishing one properly. That pulls you back into making the same decisions again, because you're reworking things instead of moving on. At this point, you've put a lot of effort in, but there's nothing solid to build on, and it leaves you feeling busy without really being productive. I found in my own work, I'll plan to do something and then just don't get back to it in time. If too much time passes, it's even harder to return to it. It's not because the work is difficult. It's because my motivation's gone and I no longer feel like doing it. When you start your channel, you might believe that improvement only happens when a video is actually published. And because of that, everything else feels like it doesn't really matter. You keep refining it until what you wanted to say no longer feels original and the effort no longer feels worthwhile. When progress is judged only by what gets published, this is what happens. Even when you've done meaningful work, it can feel like it doesn't count if your video hasn't gone live. That's because publishing is the only moment that feels visible. Did anything go live today? And when the answer is no, that section of work can feel like a whole lot of waste of time, even when you actually did a lot of useful work. It's hard to see where your time went when you've been busy all day and still don't have anything concrete to show for it. And even when you are making progress, it can feel like you're rebuilding momentum each time you start. After a while, all that restarting slowly eats away at your energy, and it simply feels harder than it should. When you look at these things together, it makes sense. You're not struggling because YouTube is too complicated to understand. The longer it drags on, the less you feel like doing it. In your previous jobs, your function was already defined. You didn't have to think about how the work was organized. But with YouTube, that structure doesn't exist unless you build it yourself. This is where you might misunderstand what workflow really means in this context. When you're building a YouTube channel, no one hands you a defined sequence of how the work is ordered. Without that order, though, it's easy to question every decision you make. When you work like this, you're not just preparing, you're actually publishing. A YouTube channel is essentially a small media production house. In a professional studio, these roles are filled by different people. For you, they're done by different versions of yourself. The editorial part is where you decide what the video is actually about. This is where you check for market fit and to make sure your topic links back to the viewer's problem. You're not just simply choosing things you like. You're looking for an understanding of what you know that meets the viewer's needs. Here's what I do. I sort out the title and the thumbnail first. Then I write one clear sentence about what the video is for before I start scripting. It stops the whole thing from wandering off course. The architecture part is where you shape the video and decide what you want to say. The video should leave the viewer understanding something they didn't understand when they started watching. This is where you decide which moments in the video matter to the viewer and help them stay with you to understand how you can help. The production part is where you're recording your video. Some creators prefer to be mobile, but even then, they still use the same basic setup each time. It may not seem important, but not changing your setup every time has real value. You don't want to rethink your audio and your lighting every time you record. Because once you start recording, your job is not fixing equipment. Your job is to start recording your message. Post-production is where you edit the video to sort out the details around it. You cut out long silent sections that makes people lose interest. You also check the title, the description and tags so that the video has a fair chance of being found and clicked. When you start looking at work in separate parts like this, you begin to see that YouTube is really about managing how information moves from one step to the next. There's a psychological reason why your productivity suffers when you mix these stages of work. It's called attention residue. A study done by Dr. Sophie Leroy shows that when you swap from one task to another, a part of your attention stays focused on the previous task. So even though you moved on, your mind hasn't caught up to the moment. It's natural to want to stop and fix a line in a script that feels awkward. But when that happens, you're still in writing mode, even though you're meant to be speaking on camera. And what you really end up doing is covering two different kinds of work at the same time. It pulls your attention away, and you can hear it in the way you speak. For creators over 40, your biggest asset is your focus. If you commit to the rule of one, only one department per session, you eliminate the pressure of switching between tasks. You'll find you can record a 20-minute video in about half an hour instead of 3 hours. If your recording space is ready to go, it's much easier to begin. When you're working on a video, you're not stuck at the beginning anymore. You can actually see it's coming together. If you stop and come back later, you're not starting from scratch. The thinking part is already done. And when you sit down to record, there's no last-minute panic or trying to force it to work. For you, it means you can build your channel while you still have a job or while the house is busy. You don't need long, perfect days to start your channel. This is where the work meets your day. You're not waiting for a free weekend anymore. You're fitting the channel into the hours you actually have. It stops being something you're trying to get and becomes something you schedule. And once it's scheduled, it becomes practical. Try time boxing. Set time aside for one thing. Work on that. When time's up, stop. You're not trying to finish everything at once. At this point, you're keeping it moving without burning yourself out. After a while, that pressure about having no time just completely settles down. Once you're shaping your video, that's where your best thinking goes. Editing doesn't need that level of focus. It's more technical and repetitive. So it helps to match the task to your energy. Use your sharper hours for deciding and shaping, your social hours for recording, and save your lower energy times for editing and sorting out the smaller details. When you plan this way, a 30-minute window is not too short to work. If your energy is low, do the subtitles, sort the tags. If your energy is higher, shape the hook. That's how you build a 20-minute video around a real schedule instead of waiting for a perfect day. In engineering, reliability is not about working harder. It's about designing things so they keep working when something goes wrong. If your consistency depends on your willpower, it will eventually fail because willpower is a finite resource. But if your consistency depends on your workflow design, it becomes a stable system because it means things are being completed. It doesn't mean a video goes live every Friday at 9 p.m. It simply means that every week an idea moves to an outline or an outline moves to a recording. You'll find that once you stop rushing, the work actually gets done faster because you're not bumping into your own schedule anymore. Working this way makes YouTube feel less intimidating. Each upload becomes part of the work you're already doing and not a standalone event. Whenever you have to decide what to do next, you're suffering from decision fatigue. At over 40, your daily life is already full of decisions. When you're ready to work, the system will show you what to do. You shouldn't be deciding if the lighting is right or if the script is finished while you're trying to record. It is a good thing to have a definition of done criteria for every stage. For instance, the shaping phase is done when the 3 main points and the conclusion are written. The recording is done when you have 2 clean takes of the main footage. When you have these boundaries, you have less to worry about. Let's look at what happens when you stop and start. In software development, IT specialists use version control so they don't lose their work. As a creator, you need to do the same. Because your time is spread out, you need to learn how to park downhill, so to speak. By that I mean, decide what comes after you're done with one task, then stop. When you finish recording, keep the camera on for a moment and spend 2 minutes writing down your next step, so you don't have to reset or rethink later. This limits the energy needed to rewind and restart. So by leaving clear notes for yourself, it takes the pressure off your mind and makes switching between tasks easier. In business, a real advantage is something that makes it hard for others to compete with you. For an over 40 creator, that advantage is not editing, it's your focus. And that means you can keep going for longer. Some creators stop within 6 months because they depend on intensity. They work long hours, work without order, and eventually can't keep going. Working this way gives you an edge. It helps you produce solid 20-minute videos with less effort than someone working without a structure. You're building a workflow that can last for as long as you're publishing. When you focus on routine instead of pushing harder, your channel is more likely to keep going even when results are slow. If you're in the moment and just coming up with ideas, stay there. Don't agonize about the camera or editing. This gives you something solid to work from, even when things aren't ideal. Now that you have a plan, the next step is the hardest, starting. How you organize your work is only one part of the picture. There's more to it, and that's what we're looking at. If this approach to YouTube makes sense to you, feel free to subscribe and follow along. I share what it looks like to start and grow a channel over 40. If you'd like to keep going, join me and click the link for more videos. I'll see you in the next one.